Hello, everyone. My name is Zach, and today we're going to be talking about an interesting subject that I was talking with my friend the other day about, and we were just discussing this because we happen to have a player within our party, and my friend is currently the dungeon master for our group, and has been for the last year. However, he was the one that kind of helped me out with terms of keeping me from being a forever DM forever. So I have been under the blessing of being a friend of his for a long time, and now I finally get to be a player. So I have really enjoyed our games a lot, and sometimes when we are driving home, he and I have gotten into a lot of discussions about a lot of things, and one of them happened to be the problem with persuasion. So, we're going to be talking today about the persuasion ability, its statistical rules, the rules as written, as well as kind of how it sort of plays into stories in games and how it can potentially break your game. As somebody who likes to analyze things and talk about the story of things, I believe that persuasion can be a very good stat. I think that its strengths are to encourage and to uplift players who are more mechanically focused. However, I think that that can be a huge detriment in terms of actually role playing. For instance, I used this example in the car when I was speaking to him, and I'll use this example with you. So, you have just designed the biggest bad of your life. Your story is incredible. Your players are having an amazing time, and your bard has maxed out his stats. So, you have the Drow Queen, the high priestess of all the Drow, and she's going to summon a demon, the likes of which the world has never seen before. And your party breaks into her chambers and is going to question her and try to make her stop her heinous ritual. And she looks at them and she says, "There is no way for you to stop me. What has been done, and I shall become the new queen of all demons." And then your bard says, "No, I roll persuasion. 29. Well, you see, you can't do that. Well, why not? Why can't I do that? Well, because she has a crown on her head that makes her immune to being persuaded." Oh, that's BS. You're right, it is BS, but I'm the DM. And while that may work for a little while, it may not be the case for every single encounter that you come by. And if your players value verisimilitude, which is to say suspension of disbelief, you may not be able to get away with that all the time. You can try to do something as, they need to respect you, right? They need to respect you as the dungeon master to be able to make critical decisions when it comes to things like that. And if they don't, then that's not a really good trade, because you're supposed to respect them as players, and they're supposed to respect you as the DM to be able to make changes as you see fit. However, I think that this also provides a lot of weaknesses in terms of trying to make a believable story from continuity reasons. If you do continue to do something like this, it may work for a little while, but in the end, it may not be as smooth as trying to attempt to find a way to incorporate persuasion into the rest of your game. Because chances are that once a player does this one time, they may do it again. And it's important that you try to understand that everybody has their own place in the game. And especially if your player is playing a bard, especially a College of Eloquence bard or maybe a glamour bard of some kind, they are a social class. And social classes that's where they really shine, is in these social interactions. And when a player is not able to persuade someone, then they may feel like you are slapping them across the face and saying no. That maybe all of their efforts that they have designed for their particular character have been misplaced efforts. And these kinds of traits, such as having high statistics, is one of the things that makes bards in particular shine. Another indication for this might be a rogue. A rogue has a lot of experience and different feats and skills, and I think having a class with too high of a skill set can cause problems, such as the inability to roll less than a 19, unless of course you roll a natural 1. That can cause a lot of issues, especially when you stack on expertise and et cetera, right? So this is kind of how I suggest incorporating that into the game. First off, don't let it get to that point, okay? Don't let it get to the point where your player has such a big stat bonus that they are able to literally persuade everything in the game. And if you do set a very high DC for the encounter to be able to persuade someone of something, let that DC be high without the player knowing that you did that. Why would you do this? Why would you set the DC super high without telling the player? For this reason, you'll make them very, very upset if they realize that you have specifically made it harder for them just because they have put so much time and effort trying to, basically optimize their class only to find out that you have essentially designed a difficulty check that is so high that under normal circumstances, it would be easier for the fighter to try and persuade the Drow Queen that she is, not supposed to take over the world by demons. So from that context, it can be kind of a messy situation, right? So what do? Basically, like I've said previously, try not to let it get to that point. And if you value statistics in your game, then you may opt out for doing a point buy system. The point buy system is very balanced, and it is able to basically say, okay, everyone, you get a certain set of range of stats, and that way that the statistic bonuses that you get from certain classes, such as playing a rogue or a bard, or even something, where you are pouring most of your statistical bonuses into charisma, such as if you're playing a sorcerer or a warlock, or even other charisma-based classes, that you may not be able to break the game as easily because everyone's stats are relatively balanced. It doesn't really even matter what race they're playing. It's only within a few numbers of bonuses. And that way your players will still feel like, oh my gosh, I'm still doing something, like I am persuading the Drow Queen. But in a more relative manner, whereas you can make the check less often, and therefore when you do get the check, it feels so much more satisfying because of the fact that you didn't get it that first couple of times. And maybe it hinges down to that moment where it's either us or her, and then we have to convince the Drow Queen that, she needs to back down, or then we're going to fight, right? So our player in particular really enjoys talking down encounters as well. That is just the kind of player that he is. He really enjoys talking down encounters from combats, essentially. Turning what would be combat encounters into encounters where you're able to make friends. You turn your enemy into a friend, or you turn them into a useful contact that you can call upon later at a better time, so that when you do face an incredibly hard fight, then you can call upon your would-be enemies to fight your battles with you. And that is extremely cool, right? It is really cool, but there is a weakness to that. If everything you interact with has that sense of that it can become a friend, then your world is no longer dangerous anymore, right? So you want your world to be dangerous. You want your world to have lots of evil in it, as some of these old-fashioned DMs have said in the past. You want your world to be seeming like it is dark and broody or mysterious, or maybe not even that, but just dangerous, right? Like that it might be a dangerous world for you to live in. If there's monsters in your world, for instance, your world will be dangerous. It doesn't matter if it is a happy-go-lucky campaign or a dark, grim, gothic campaign. It is all going to be dangerous. And so therefore, your players, when they face a combat encounter, they should feel like they're going to lose. However, they have a better chance of success than what they might seem. So, with this in mind, keeping in mind that if you have a player like this at your table, which chances are you probably do, anyone who wants to interact with something, to try and make friends with it, for example, something that you don't necessarily want them to, you don't necessarily want to hard railroad them, but you may want to soft contain that. Not saying no explicitly, but saying you may not want to because, etc. Once again, you may not want to because of this reason. You may not want to convince the owlbear to help you fight because the owlbear doesn't have an understanding of humanoid tactics. Its understanding of coming to aid you in combat is to kill everything, because it is an owlbear and it likes to eat things. And chances are it may eat your valuable loot that you may get on these other bodies, because owlbears just eat limbs and they digest things. It doesn't have to be quite like that, but insert monster here, insert NPC here, where it's like, if you decide that you want to make friends with this person, you have to realize the consequences of doing so. If you do persuade them, for instance, what happens if you did persuade the Drow Queen to give up her quest? See, that's an interesting idea in of itself, right? Because your big bad evil guy has this incredible backstory that you've designed. They have this ideas, like these strong motivators. And all of a sudden, some guy comes along and says no, and they stop. That's unrealistic. It's extremely unrealistic when you think about it, but it may get your villain thinking. And that in and of itself is something that you can show the player. You can say, the Drow Queen lifts up her dagger, and as she's about to plunge it into the heart of this creature, she looks at you in the eyes as you say this, and you can see a hint of regret. There are memories that she remembers, things that she's done, places that she's been, moments in time that you can tell that she regrets. And then she shakes it off, and with a determined look on her face, she plunges the dagger deep into the heart of the monster. See, that is a good way that you can include that into your game without saying directly, no, because I'm the DM and I say so. But you can just say a soft no, like she would, under normal means, but if she was to deny this part of herself, she would no longer be herself, and she's not willing to do that. Because she has a lot of weight of responsibility. She's supposed to become the new Demon Queen, right? And other people are counting on her. All of her minions are counting on her to do this. And so from a protagonistic standpoint, imagine if you put yourselves in the shoes of the Drow Queen, right? That will help you in coming to terms with how to deal with a player who is using persuasion as a weaponized tool to essentially overcome any encounter that they come by. Persuasion is not, it's like any other skill. It's not something that can let you overcome every single hurdle. You can't wave a sword at everything and expect them in the same murder hobo context to just keel over and die because you say so. It has to be a hard-fought battle. And if your players do not want that hard-fought battle and they have optimized their characters to be, I am the persuasion man, I will use... It's anything, right? If you're facing any kind of optimization, you will come in contact with these kind of situations where it's you are the player, right? Or it's that one thing, your one idea or your one story. And perhaps, maybe, another thing is, maybe you just need to let it go. Maybe you just need to allow that player a little time to shine and not necessarily just say no. It would be cool, right? To think about it from the context of, do you want your story to completely change in directions? And if you say yes, then perhaps that could be a good deal, you know? It could be a good deal to have the Drow Queen all of a sudden, you know, drop her dagger and start crying, you know? And then all of her minions are like, you know, what are you doing? Why are you stopping my queen? You know, like that kind of a thing, which could be really, really cool. So it's really up to you what you decide to do in the end, but try to keep these things in mind. If you have a problem with persuasion, try to, number 1, never let it happen in the first place. Number 2, soft contain it. Don't say no. Say, well, maybe you shouldn't. And then you can also say, let's let it happen and see where this goes. You know? So with that in mind, thank you so much for listening. I hope you have a good day. Best of luck to you. And may all your rolls be 20s.